A Clear Authentic Brand podcast, and I'm your host, Amy Dardis. And today I am so excited to have Dr. Paul White on the show. Dr. White is a psychologist, author, and speaker on developing healthy workplace relationships. He is the co-author of the best-selling book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, which he co-wrote with Dr. Gary Chapman, who's also the author of The 5 Love Languages. So, based on extensive research, Dr. White has developed practical ways for leaders and employees to communicate authentic appreciation that leads to increased employee engagement, lower staff turnover, more positive work environments, and higher productivity. So, Dr. White, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
How did you even get started on this track of workplace appreciation?
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist by training. Early in my career, I focused on evaluating individuals for ADHD and dyslexia and learning problems. Mid-career, I was approached by some friends who were business consultants that this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, that kept running into family business issues because 85% of all the companies in the U.S. are family owned. And I grew up in the context of a family-owned business. So I wound up traveling around the country and some in Europe, working with highly successful multi-million-dollar family-owned businesses, dealing with the family issues or relational issues that intertwined and next generation stuff. And then my wife and I were rereading the 5 love languages at that time. And I thought, I wonder if this could help in family businesses. So I pursued Dr. Chapman. It took me a year to get through to him and finally met with him and pitched the idea. And he and I worked together on it, developing the book, an online assessment that 500,000 people have taken, and then training materials for people to be able to use to apply the concepts to their setting.
So, where is the overlap and the differences with the 5 love languages book?
So the languages are the same, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and physical touch, but they're applied differently because the nature of the relationships at work are different versus, a personal relationship with a spouse or your kids is different than somebody that you work with or your supervisor or somebody you're supervising. So we took the concepts, and love isn't a great match for the workplace relationships usually. And so we thought that appreciation was the equivalent concept and translated the materials and the assessment into that. And our assessment not only identifies the language that's important to a person, but the actions, because we found that, especially in different work settings, an act of service differs for somebody who's, HVAC person versus a nurse in a hospital versus a school teacher, that kind of thing. And so we tried to contextualize, and that actually created 20 different versions for different work settings so that the actions match.
So when you were reading through the 5 love languages, what had you been seeing in the work you'd been doing with businesses that made you think about this correlation?
Well, one is that we know not everybody feels loved in the same way. And it seemed to make sense, and did some sort of field research and talked to people. Not everybody feels appreciated in the same way. And so we looked at that. And what we found is that most workplaces sort of start with words. If they're used in the 5 languages, and, thank somebody or praise them or give them an award in front of others. And we found that less than half of employees have words as the primary way that they want to be shown appreciation. So you're going to miss over 50% if you only use words. And we knew that tangible gifts in the form of bonuses and raises and that kind of stuff also wasn't working, that people continued to leave their jobs and not feel valued, even though they maybe got some kind of bonus. So it was just seeing and observing behaviors and patterns in businesses and relationships there that made us look more closely at it.
So when you had been working with these family-owned businesses, were you observing a lot of disconnect, a lot of
Sure. Well, I was working with one construction company in North Carolina. and asked the dad how the plan was going for as far as sort of business succession to his son. He said, I think it's going well. My son's stepping up. I think it'll work. I walked across the hall and asked the son the same question. He said, this is never going to work. I can't ever please my dad. And so there was a disconnect there, and started exploring that and just found that over and over again.
As far as that son not feeling like he was living up to his dad's expectations or
Right. But the dad thought that, he was encouraging or supporting the son enough. And this was in the 20 teens. There was just a lot of turnover, which continues today. And so we saw that it was a difference that employee recognition programs, over 90% of all companies have some kind of employee recognition. It might be as little as getting a card on your birthday or bonuses and stuff, but it just wasn't working and continues to not work. People don't feel valued from that. And so wanted to try to figure out how to solve the issue.
So you went through and you did the research and you guys wrote the book. And then what happened after that?
Well, we wrote the book and developed the assessment at the same time because we wanted to find out how people wanted to be shown appreciation. And then we found out that most people don't necessarily want to be appreciated just by their supervisor or their boss, but they want to be appreciated by their colleagues or people underneath them. And so we developed a process in the assessment. They can identify what actions do they want from whom, because it may differ from your boss, from your colleague, and then started a training process and program, about a half day of training to teach people how to show appreciation authentically versus just sort of going through the motions, and how to deliver it in the ways that are meaningful to the recipient. Most of us start out by communicating appreciation in the way that we like it, which is fine, but you're not going to hit maybe as many as 25 or 30% match you. So being able to help people expand their repertoire of how to show appreciation in a way that's going to make a difference to the person that gets it.
If someone hasn't taken the assessment, like let's say you're a business owner and you have a team of people, how hard is it to identify what your team's ways of receiving appreciation?
Yeah. I mean, there's sort of two tactics people use, neither of which work very well. One is to observe people give or receive appreciation, but it's not a high frequency behavior. You're not usually there because often it's one-on-one between two people. And unless you're that person, you're not going to observe it. And secondly, most people don't know. They just say, I don't know, tell me thanks. That's sort of what they got. So you don't get much. And so we've really sort of opened the cabinet so that there's a lot more options and you can find. And the reason we had to go to specific actions is, say, even within words, the category of words of affirmation, which are words that are affirming the value of the person. There's a lot of variety that, about half of the population don't want to be affirmed in front of others or publicly. And that's what employee recognition is lots of times, giving them the Employee of the Month award. You have a little ceremony and that kind of thing. For about half of employees, they really don't want that. They don't want to be called out in front of others. And so even though your intent is good, it doesn't really accomplish the goal of helping them feel valued and affirmed in a way that's important to them.
So you're saying at first you found that there's a big lack of self-awareness for people in not being aware of how they actually feel like they feel appreciated or receive appreciation.
Yeah, because appreciation until recently really hasn't been a topic or focus in the workplace. I mean, except for in the form of recognition. And so people tend to not think about it in those terms. And so through the training, we give lots of examples and sort of harken back to prior relationships. It could be school teachers. It could be a coach, that they did or said something that really supported you and made you feel valued, or earlier in jobs. People generally know what they don't like first, and it's a little harder for them to narrow down. Yeah, I really do like it when somebody helps me out when I'm sort of overwhelmed and trying to get stuff done for the day.
Why do you feel like appreciation really hasn't been a focus in the workplace up until recently? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm a little bit older and grew up working most of my life in the 1900s. And it was about getting the work done and doing the job, and you got paid and have a nice day. I mean, it really wasn't part of sort of the milieu of the workplace. And so
Mhm.
whether we've progressed or whatever, and I think, just different generations have different expectations for jobs now, that they want them to be fulfilling, satisfying, and meet other needs than just a paycheck. And so that's grown and it continues to grow, where Gen Z and those Gen A below them have higher expectations for what they're going to get out of work experience than, say, I did when I was a teenager or 20 something.
When it was you and you were just working, like, was it something that ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, I had a part-time job in high school at a Christian bookstore and really enjoyed it, but the boss scared me to death. He owned other businesses. He owned a construction firm, and he was just hardcore. He didn't smile, and it wasn't that I was looking to be praised. I just didn't want to be yelled at or critiqued and criticized. So it was more of a fear-driven kind of motivation.
Did you grow up kind of thinking like, man, I want to do work that I find meaningful and going on a journey searching for that for yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in the context of a family business that was a manufacturing firm, and that is not my skill set. I have very poor mechanical and visual spatial. Plus, I have two older brothers, and I'm always going to be younger. And so, my skills were more in verbal and social. And so I was looking for a pathway.
So you knew that type of work, the family business, that was not where you were going to
As I
find your
viewed it, I mean,
center.
as I look back, I think I probably could have found, a place, but I couldn't see it at a younger age.
So today, you guys go and you do trainings, right? You said it's about a half day workshop training
Uh-huh.
that you guys do.
Yeah, I grew up professionally in the not-for-profit and social service world where people don't get paid much and a lot of emotional demands. And so I wanted to create a resource that people in those settings could use because training can cost a bit. And so we
Hmm.
created a training kit, an online training course that takes a couple hours to go through, that a person then can lead a team or teams through the process. So we wanted to create sort of a DIY, do-it-yourself resource for people to use to learn about the languages, learn about what impact they have, about authenticity and mistakes to avoid.
So you guys have that training available, and then you also do the in-person workshops and stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
When you facilitate a workshop, what are you looking for in the room? I mean, what's kind of your approach in how you
Well,
facilitate that?
I just recently did one for Sandia National Labs in New Mexico, which is sort of where the atomic bomb was created. But it's a government agency of engineers and computer programmers, which is different than a group of elementary school teachers or social workers. And so try to find out the context of what kind of people we're going to be talking to and their skill set and a little bit about context. You know, Sometimes I'm brought in when there's been a problem, there's sort of a morale problem or low satisfaction. Other times it's more like, well, we're doing okay, but we could do better. So,
Hmm.
approaching that so that I have realistic expectations for where to start with people and how far we're going to take them. So it's a fun process. I mean, it's pretty interactive. Usually I do it with people sat at group tables and they may have interactions throughout the training and lots of questions and examples and stories and humor stories and cartoons, all kinds of fun things.
You're walking into all different kinds of environments, all different types of people. Can you pinpoint the ones where you can see there's an obstacle in the way of them getting on board with this idea?
Well, over the training, maybe they send me some body language And we tell people this is not necessarily for everybody, because there's some people that just say, hey, we pay them. That's enough, have a nice day. And I just ask
Mhm.
people that aren't interested to not become obstructive, but just to sort of stand to the side and observe. Because what we found is over time, we really focus on authentic appreciation rather than sort of just trying to look like you appreciate somebody. And we give them the tools to be able to make it practical in their daily lives and work with them over time. And people see that it is genuine, that it works, and people are encouraged. And often they sort of lower their defenses and join in. And plus, we have research. I mean, we published research to show that this works. It makes a difference in attendance, in people not quitting, showing up on work on time, following instructions, doing things in the right way, increases profitability because you're not losing and having to retrain people. And also you get more positive feedback from your customers because the morale and interaction style of the people is more positive. So it works if it's done right.
What do you mean when you say authentic appreciation?
Well, some people say, I appreciate you. You're great. Glad you're on the team. Way to go. It's words. And then they go and, maybe talk behind your back or complain to you to another employee. We help people find things or characteristics that they can truly value about another person, even though people can be irritating and we're different. And so it's not like they're going to become your best friend, but you can value that they do a thorough job, or they get their work done on time, or they're willing to listen and try new things. There's all different kinds of things. And not everybody is great at their job. And so what do you do when somebody's struggling in their job? I mean,
Mhm.
we try to help team members figure that out.
What do you do when when someone's not great at that?
Well, there's different scenarios or levels of it, but we talk about one of the differences between appreciation and recognition is that recognition largely is about accomplishing goals and good work and that kind of stuff. And that's
Mm,
good. And we do want to encourage and reward that. But we believe employees are people, and people are more than a production unit, and we have
mhm,
strengths and value beyond our work. I had a team member that she's a good worker, but she's just got a cheerful personality, fun sense of humor. When we have group meetings, she sort of lightens the environment, and I really value. It's not about her getting her work done. It's about her as a person. And
mhm.
sometimes it's not even about what they do at work. I mean, sometimes you have to look hard for some people, right? And so maybe you've got somebody who's they're training for a half marathon, and you're just impressed with that, and you just say, "I'm really impressed. You got the discipline to do that." Or maybe you have a single mother who's just super committed to her kids and make sure that she's there for their events, and you can communicate value about that. Even though sometimes it may create a little tension at work that she's coming in late or because she's got a sick kid or whatever, but we can find things about people that we value.
So it's not just learning to communicate appreciation. You're honestly starting with this like fundamental shift in how you're even seeing people or your coworkers or your employees.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because I mean, historically, one theme of, capitalism is efficiency, productivity, profitability, and it maybe unintentionally, but it sort of turns people into, you view them as tools or an object, a machine to get work done. And it depersonalizes them. And there's a reaction in our culture by a lot of people against that, I'm more than just, a computer programmer or an accountant, seen as more than that and related to, and maybe potentially valued.
That that doesn't seem like a ridiculous ask, right? I mean, it's interesting that outside of the workplace, it seems like we can all get on board with viewing people as precious individuals, right?
Right. Right.
But it's interesting that at some point within the workplace, we somehow started to dehumanize it a bit.
Well, because the purpose of work is to provide a good or service that somebody wants or needs and is willing to pay for. I mean, that's what work is. And so this is not going to just making everybody feel good. Businesses have to make money. And so they have to, keep expenses low and have enough revenue to have a profit. But what's interesting is that companies that treat their employees as people and show appreciation are more profitable and more successful than those that don't. And we've got research to show that, and it's coming out in the European Union and in the Securities Exchange Commission, to the point that they're starting to monitor and measure the kinds of things that we're talking about, because it makes a difference to an investor. Let's say you've got a paint company here and a paint company there, and one treats its employees well and views them as people, and this one really doesn't. It's like, turn the screws and let's make as much profit as possible. The other one's actually being more profitable, and that's important to an investor. So it's just becoming evident.
Yeah, absolutely. When you've been going through and implementing these trainings with these companies that you've worked with, are there specific metrics that they're tracking that then they're sharing back with you? Or is it something where you guys are agreeing to stay in communication for a specific amount of time in order to really get the full scope of what
Yeah.
this
It's sort of
shift
it's
is?
sort of in process. I mean, it takes time and energy to measure different things, but clearly, turnover is easy to measure. Even on the job accidents go down when people feel valued, and customer ratings go up when employees feel valued, because that gets transferred to the customer. Yeah, we both measure it and try to get them to measure things, but to be honest, people got enough to do. And unless they really want the info, there's some things that we can measure, but we could measure a lot more that would show it. But we're sort of on the pathway to that.
What have you found to be, from the time that they have the training and they're introduced to the new concepts, how long it takes for them to really start seeing a shift that sticks within their organization?
Well, I've had a number of, we worked with DirecTV and a number of their customer service offices across the country, that they were seeing differences in people's behavior and attitude within a month. I mean, in 3 months and 6 months, and then probably 6 months to 12 months. I have a mining company in South Dakota and Colorado that has worked with us for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, that they sort of bring us back for, retraining or upgrading training, or sort of looking at a different way, because their profitability and retention rate has just grown over. Taught them, they do their own training. I mean, within a year, you're going to be able to document it. You're going to see it typically earlier, in 3 to 6 months.
What are some of the ways that you encourage or train people to make this intentional? So instead of it just being like, I read the book, I had the training, how do they make sure that it sticks and they don't get distracted by the day-to-day of just the business?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the trick, if you will, is to find out what systems they already have in place. So let's say that they have stand-up team meetings. Let's say it's at the beginning of the day. Well,
Yeah.
or at the beginning of the week, well,
Okay.
we help them incorporate asking people, hey, tell me about an incident this last week where you got positive feedback or felt appreciated or whatever. And we sort of help make it part of the culture versus a separate thing. And usually we find a few key people that really get the idea and are sort of the ambassadors, and help them lead meetings or a discussion in a meeting. Try to, maybe at the year-end meeting, have, some kind of celebration about it. One place, they bought thank you cards and had them on racks in the office that people could get and write a thank you note. And there's that kind of stuff as well. So we help them think through different ways to work with it. It includes virtual teams, and we have an assessment that's just for people that work remotely, because how do you spend quality time with somebody who's not in the office,
Mm-hmm.
and give them examples of doing that and help them learn to, in their setting, or in a place like nursing in a hospital where, a team meeting doesn't happen very often, but how do you get them together otherwise? It's been fun. It's sort of a creative problem solving of whether it's manufacturing or construction or education, medical services, trying to figure out what works for them.
I like that. You're looking at what are the systems and processes and the environment that is based on how you already run your business. And then you try to figure out how to implement intentional appreciation into like their day-to-day operations
Right.
instead of just being like, well, you need to add this or you need to
Right.
do it this way. You're not asking them to do something different. You're building off of what they already have.
Yeah. And that comes from my work as a psychologist, that we know that behavior change is more successful when it builds onto an existing habit or closely resembles an existing habit rather than creating a whole new thing or system. That's just too much out of people.
Yeah. And which is where so many business implementation plans can kind of fail because it's too different than how they currently operate. So I like that you do that. And then the fact that you find the nuances between the industries themselves of recognizing that it's not a one size fits all for
No.
every
And
organization.
in a manufacturing plant, they're on a production line and they can't shut down the line to spend time with somebody. So you figure out ways over lunch or at breaks or a pre-work meeting or after-work meeting, or it doesn't have to be at work. And so, we work with the variables.
What do you think is the frequency at which appreciation needs to be communicated?
Yeah, that differs across industries, and especially across people, and also sort of how long they've been there. So let's say you've
Mhm.
been working on a team and you've been working with somebody for 7 years and you work together pretty well. Being able to communicate appreciation to them does not need to be as frequent as a new team member who's coming on and sort of learning what to do and what's expected. And you're sort of actually shaping their behavior to be positive, so that, maybe a couple times a week you might say or do something for them. Whereas the other person, it might be once every 3 weeks or something, to say, I really appreciate it when you get those folders together and they're ready for me, and then I'm good to go. So,
So you're saying that the appreciation it's specific and it's also in reference to who they are as a person, not
it can be related
not
to work.
necessarily what they've done.
It can be. I mean, it can be. I mean, it's like, thanks for getting your reports to me on time. We teach sort of a model of saying a person's name,
Okay.
Jennifer, thanks for getting reports to me on time. And then the third piece, and so specific, and then why that's important, because that then helps me have time to think about it and write my report that goes to the management team versus not knowing and having to rush. So use your name, be specific about what you value and why it's important to you or the organization or to the client.
So what does this look like across some of the other languages like acts
Yeah.
of service or
Yeah,
quality
quality
time?
quality time is an important one because we found out that there's actually sort of a generational difference or differences there. For those of us that are a bit older, quality time frequently fell into getting time with your manager or supervisor, so that either you could ask questions and get clarification or be instructed or give feedback on what you're seeing and observing. And that was really important. Also, we knew that time was important to them. And so the fact that they were choosing to spend time with us gave us a sense of value. For younger workers, they don't really care about spending time with their supervisor or manager. They like to hang out with their friends. And so that could be going to lunch together, or maybe working on a project together, or going out after work to, sports bar and watch a game or something like that. I had one administrative assistant. She said, yeah, my boss likes quality time, but I'm sort of shy and he's sort of intense and doesn't make me feel valued. But she would like to, go join her friends for for lunch or whatever. So quality time is that acts of service. It's not rescuing a low performing person that's not doing what they're supposed to. It's just that at work, depending on the work setting, service industries, like let's say dentist office, you might have a whole bunch of patients show up all at once at the front desk and the receptionist could use some help. And so the office manager could help out and check in people, even though it's not her responsibility, versus making the receptionist feel sort of overwhelmed. Or another context is where you're working on a time limited project and you've got to get this report done or presentation done by for tomorrow. And, you're working late and working hard. What's something somebody else could do that might be helpful, either to take part of today's responsibilities so that you can stay focused on the presentation, or maybe they can go make these handouts or whatever. And so just helping out when you see the person's got more than what anybody could handle.
Mm-hmm.
Tangible gifts is not rewards or bonuses. That way, it's really small things to show that you're getting to know one another and what they like. So maybe bringing in their favorite cup of special coffee, or bringing in a Frosty or frozen something in the summertime. Or it might be a magazine about something they're interested in. Maybe they got a sports team that they're interested in. And, you say, hey, I know you follow the Chiefs, and here's the preseason thing about that. It doesn't have to be a bought thing. It could be maybe that somebody's going to coach their kids' flag football team, and you've done that before, and you found a website that has some cool, exercises and plays, and you share that with them. So it's just about them. And then the last one is physical touch, which is probably the most awkward in the United States.
Sure.
But it's not, it's actually pretty highly valued in other cultures, because like our Hispanic friends, they're more physical. They greet each other maybe with a kiss on the cheek, and to not touch at all feels pretty cold and impersonal. But in the US, it's largely about celebration. It's like a high five when you finish a project, or a fist bump when you solve a problem, or a congratulatory handshake maybe. And maybe there's a difficult time. Maybe their husband was just in a car wreck and they go to the hospital. You have to be aware of, it's always the recipient that chooses what's appropriate. And it differs even culturally within the US. In the South, they touch more than in the Northeast and so forth.
Have you found in studying workplace appreciation or recognition programs that exist, is it that they don't exist enough, or that they're too generic when they do exist?
Some of both. Clearly
Okay.
the generic piece sort of undermines it. Because some people, they get the employee of the month and they get a gift card to Amazon or go out to dinner, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Because they're the employee of the month. It doesn't say anything about them or what they've done or contributed. So clearly the generic part. And what was the other part that you mentioned?
That there is no recognition program at all, that
Oh,
there's
yeah.
no
Well,
intention behind it.
like I said, 90% plus have a recognition, but it's more, it's not that they don't have it. It's just that it looks lame and people are sort of sarcastic about it, to be honest. They just say, yeah, whatever. The employee of the month, and people are commenting, yeah, you should see her when she's not happy. So it's sort of the lack of authenticity.
What are some of the feedback or aha moments that you've heard from people when you've been facilitating these trainings?
So we take teams through an exercise that we'll have them, if they haven't taken the inventory yet, we'll have them sort of do a self-assessment of what they think their language might be and why that's important to them. In other words, where it came from or what's it mean to them. And we'll have a team discuss that. And lots of times they're very surprised at that. They may have the same language, let's say words, because that is the most frequent one. It's about 45% of the population. But what they want to be praised for differs, and or how, whether it's private or written. Words can be a note or an email or a text. And then the reason, where does that get to them sort of deeper? What is it, the message? And people are often very surprised and intrigued by how you can have the same language but different actions, and then even have the same action, but it means something different to different people.
So there's just so many nuances to
Yeah.
which I mean makes sense because no two people are the same. So it
Right.
makes sense that the languages wouldn't be the same either. Do you find that business owners feel a little overwhelmed by that concept because they're like, whoa,
Well, yeah,
you
I mean,
know?
they did. And in fact, at the beginning, sort of were focused on managers and supervisors. And that's what led us to, hey, people want to know that they're valued by their colleagues and they want to communicate appreciation to their colleagues. And so we then shifted the focus from just managers and supervisors to team members. And in fact, there are a number of managers and supervisors that just aren't into this. And
Mhm.
so we help them the team apply it and sort of give the manager a pass on it, versus it getting stuck there, and then nobody
Right.
down here receives any appreciation. So yeah,
Yeah.
we work with people where they are.
What about even appreciation being put back on the manager? Like, how many managers or leaders out there don't feel appreciated?
Talk about that in the training that, we tend to think about it sort of top down. It's not according to the organizational chart. It's person to person. And so it
Mhm.
could be from the manager to a team member, team member to team member, team manager to manager, or to a different team member. Let's say somebody has computer problems and you're in IT and they come and bring it to you and you fix it. You don't report to them. They don't report to you, but you want to communicate appreciation about it. And so it just sort of frees up the system to flow wherever it exists.
Yeah, because appreciation is the responsibility of everyone. It is not specific to, oh, well, you're the boss or you're the leader,
Right.
therefore this
Right.
is on you.
Yeah.
I like that you're kind of creating like a culture of empowerment there in the sense it's like, hey, you have as much influence to show appreciation to anyone, whether it's your manager or your coworker or your subordinate or your customer. That's a role we all get to play, which is awesome that you are probably shifting the way people think about that.
Yeah. At least some people, for sure.
Because most employee recognition programs are very much like, oh, it's the company's, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
the company's recognition program.
Right. Examples of people given an award from the CEO because that's his or her role. The CEO doesn't know this person. This person doesn't know the CEO. And it's like, you know, changed my life. They said something nice about me, but they don't even know me or what I do. So yeah, it takes it from the generic to the personal.
Very people driven. Have you found that people's love language is the same as their appreciation language at work?
Yeah. So we've done research on that and we found that about, what is it, 2/3 of the time, their top love language is one of their top two appreciation languages. And the same thing reverse, that one of their top appreciation languages is one of their top two. Obviously, our assessment doesn't include physical touch because there was a lot of reactivity to that because of sexual harassment and so forth. So that sort of
Mhm.
falls out. But nonetheless, I mean, your relationships do change and your expectations for work relationships than personal relationships. So they're similar, but they're not exactly the same.
And have you also found that people's appreciation language can change based on the environment that they're in or the team that they're with?
I would say yes to that. We haven't done formal research on that, but we do know that in certain life circumstances, a couple of languages pop up. When you're in a stressful situation, like let's say your husband's in the hospital, okay, that an act of service sort of pops up as well as quality time that, sort of support. And that's sort of enculturated, at least in North America. And so that changes, but it may be a short term just during that circumstance and then it resolves. And also over time, over career, a person's language of appreciation may change. So for example, early in your career, I'll just use myself example. We had twin sons. I was working as a social worker. I wasn't making a lot of money. And, to be able to afford a babysitter and go out to a very simple dinner Burger King or something was special. Now, if you give me a coupon to Burger King, it doesn't mean as much, right? Because I'm in a different life stage. So life stage can change. And actually, we know that people at the end of their career, that words of affirmation that are very specific to how they've impacted you or the organization are highly, highly valuable, far more than
Okay.
gifts. So,
Okay.
usually we give them a retirement watch. That's okay. But people want to know, how did I impact this place?
Yeah.
So,
If you buy the book, do they get access to the assessment?
so they get access to what we call our basic assessment. It's sort of the starter one that's generic, but then we've created what we call industry specific ones for medical settings, school settings, construction settings, government, military, all that. And they can either buy codes or groups of codes for their team members for those assessments, as well as a group profile. It's good to find out what your language is, but really the goal is to find out how they encourage each other. And so our profile identifies their languages, the actions they like, the actions that they really don't want. So you don't sort of make a mistake and create some embarrassment or whatever. Everything can be gotten at our website. It's appreciation at work, the word, not the at sign, but appreciationatwork.com. And as well as the training kits on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, all kinds of examples.
Appreciationatwork.com is the website.
Yeah, they can go there, and at the top, there'll be a tab, assessments, or they can go to the MBA Inventory.com. It's another site just to look at the assessments.
Is that where they can find the industry
Yeah.
specific?
As well as on appreciation at work.
They can take that based on their inventory, which is more helpful if it's specific to
Right.
the industry that they're in.
Right.
And then they can also have their team take it,
Right.
which is very important because without having your team take it, you're not going to know how to really implement this
Right.
effectively. And then there's options to do the online training course or hire.
We've got
To,
1,300 facilitators across the world, actually, that can come and do the training.
and you said it's a half-day workshop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In order to do it. So then come in and then build it and then be able to understand the types of workplace appreciation languages, what your team falls into, and then
And there's
actually
a plan to help you implement it.
and implementing it. Yes. Awesome. Well, I will make sure that all of those resources are linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for all your research into this and your willingness to try and shift workplace cultures and bringing awareness to the humanness of relationships and at work.
Well, it's been fun, and there's always more to learn and do. We find cultural differences. I'm going to have 500,000 people take this as it's amazing how consistent the patterns are across cultures, but there's some, like in the military, an act of service is more frequently a team member's primary language than words. So helping them get their job done, because that's the focus of the military. And
That's
even work. Yeah.
interesting how you're able to kind of step back and see this big picture and then finding these themes.
There's a summary of our research articles that they can find, and differences across time and cultures and generations. So
Yeah.
quality
Super.
time is more important to younger workers, but it's time with their team members, not with their supervisor.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. But then also interesting how a supervisor owner, leader, whoever, they can choose to invest in helping promote
Right.
those opportunities for their team to connect to each other.
Right. Yeah. Order lunch in, and let them hang out together, or someplace after work and hang out, or go to a ball game together, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Because by promoting relationships outside of work, it's a ROI back into the
Absolutely.
trust and the relationships within the workplace.
Yeah. I mean, one of the major benefits of people feeling valued and appreciated is they stay longer at work. And that's the single highest non-productive cost for most businesses is losing a team member, having to train a team member.
And you found that one of the biggest reasons people leave to begin with is that they don't feel appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, one research study found 79% of the people who left a job voluntarily, they weren't fired, they left, cited a lack of appreciation as the main reason for leaving.
Wow, that's a
Most,
very large
most
amount.
bosses think people leave for more money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they may arrange that they get more money, but that's not why they left, because leaving takes sort of a lot of emotional energy over time. And it's that they feel like they don't value or care about me here.
And so by being proactive about showing appreciation, that is a very big contributing factor to lowering the turnover to begin with.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and
Sure.
insight
Sure.
today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Well, that's all for this episode, and I'll see you guys next time.